The single most important decision you'll ever make as a man. What do you think that is? We as men make thousands and thousands and thousands of decisions over our lifetime, but there's this one decision that you're going to make that is the most important decision in your entire life while you're here. So as you're making this decision, you better get it right, right? Because it's going to be a very important decision on your journey. It's going to completely affect how you experience this reality. What do you think that decision is? Who you choose to marry and who you choose to have kids with. There is this great book written by Napoleon Hill on wishes don't bring riches. And it was kind of a book written after the book Think and Go Rich, written, I think, in 1937, at least got published in 1937. And if you don't know if you don't know the book Think and Grow Rich or who Napoleon Hill is, basically he was hired by Andrew Carnegie. At the time, Andrew Carnegie was the wealthiest man on the planet at the turn of the century, and he hired Napoleon Hill to study all these successful humans. And he studied about 500 of the most successful men. Now, success meaning finances, but also fitness, also faith, also family, all these types of decisions. He ranked and he categorized all of these different elements that make someone successful. And he looked at all these components and he came down to this one idea that who a man chooses to marry and have kids with will dramatically affect his life. And if you look to evolutionary psychology, one of the things that they say for our organisms, one of the main purposes is to procreate, right? That's one of the main reasons why we're here, is to procreate. So who you're merging your genetics with is very, very important. Now, we can't go into all the decision making and all that type of stuff, what you're actually looking for. But we're going to talk about today, how do you get that skill? What's that one skill? So Charlie Munger says the most dangerous thing to a man's success or finances is a woman with a pretty face and a crazy brain. Now, I can speak from experience, and I can speak from a lot of guys' experience that they've experienced this. And I see this time and time again. Guys completely neglect their personality or their brain, and they just go all in and over leveraged on looks. And why do so many men fall into this trap? Why does that happen? Why do you think that is? Well, it's because they lack this one critical skill. And if you master this one skill, it's going to save you years of heartbreak and protect your hard earned wealth and secure the legacy that you'll one day pass on. And this is very, very important. And right now, I want you to think about that. What do you think that one skill is? What's that one skill? Is it building wealth? If you look at the statistics, pretty much the number one factor why all people get in divorces is because of finances. So is it building wealth? Is that what's going to save you from a broken marriage? How about discipline? What about you being disciplined, staying on track, going after your dreams, that type of thing? Is that important? Or what about knowing thyself? Deeply knowing thyself and getting to know who you are. Is that important, right? Know thyself. Or what about the chat? You know how to keep the conversation going. You know how to talk to people. You know how to talk to women. You've got the chat. That's a skill that you need to know. Or what about your career? What career choice are you going to make, right? Is this important, right? Well, all of these skills are important, but it's not the main skill that you actually need. All right. The main skill. What do you think that is? Let's get a drum roll. Psychometrics. The one skill you need to understand is psychometrics, the ability to read people. Do you have that ability when you walk into a room? Can you tell different types of people? Can you tell different people's personality types? Can you tell when you're interacting with a woman that she's got traces of psychopathy, or you can pick up on just asking some questions? You can say there's high levels of narcissism or NPD or BPD. Can you tell these things from just simple questions that you can ask? Because when you ask people questions, they give away a lot. Now, understanding how to read people isn't that difficult. It doesn't take that long. It just takes like focus effort, but this will play into every decision you'll make moving forward, because it's not only going to depend on your life partner, but it's going to depend on your community and the type of people that are in that community. It's going to matter on business partners, life choices, right? Who you go into business with is very important. Who you hire, what type of people are you hiring? Are you able to know who they are and how to support them? What about friends? Picking the right friends, right? This skill is going to come across all boards of your life. And if you understand how to read people, it's going to be very powerful. So, what is psychometrics? Well, psychometrics is the science of measuring mental abilities, traits, and behaviors. It involves creating tools like tests and questionnaires to understand people's personality, intelligence, skills, and attitudes. So, for example, you could take a psychometric test and it could help you hire the right people, right? So when you're looking for a job position, you're like, what kind of person would fit this, right? Like this position that I'm hiring. We do this at Social Self. We look at people's psychometrics and just try to see how they fit in to our ecosystem. But most importantly, it's going to help when you're looking for a long-term relationship. So for men that can't read women, whether she's a good long-term partner, right? Because this is something you want to screen for. You want to screen. And the way you screen is you don't ask people straight up, okay? You ask kind of like off questions, and you don't ask the question direct, right? You want kind of like indirect questions. You want to know where she is on the dark triad. This is important, guys. Does she exhibit high levels of psychopathy? You want to think about this, right? This is big. You're merging your genes together. Like the evolutionary psychologist Dr. David Buss talks about, the one of the most important things for our organisms is to reproduce and recreate our genetics. Like, do you want to merge your genetics with psychopathy? Do you want to have little psychopaths running around? I don't think so. So we want to screen for that, right? There's something, and obviously everything has a spectrum, right? We don't want to be merging with NPD, these types of traits, where they are on the narcissistic scale, right? Like these are the types of things. Better off finding one that's healthy right from the beginning and then moving forward with that than figuring that out 5-10 years down the line when you've already had kids with them, and then now you're kind of hooped, right? And you look at in history, or you look at the data, and you look at this happens all the time, right? And here's the thing, we're not here to project fear, right? This is not like a fear seminar. This is not a fear thing to understand. But what this is to help you kind of give you a tool in your belt, right? So if you start, or you're an established man and you have a career and you've got wealth, right? Is she with you for your money? Like, can you screen for that? Is that something you can do? If she shows signs of psychopathy, is that what you do? Now I've just gone to the dark side. What about the light side? What if she's a good mother? Like, what traits do you look for in a good mother? How's she going to integrate with your family? How's she going to integrate with your friend group? Will she be good? What are the traits that you're looking for procreation, right? What are these things that we're looking for? What are the things that are exhibiting that she does really well? Will she have that mothering touch? Right? Well, how is she in the room with you, right? When you go to a dinner party or you go to your family function, how is she in the room with you as well, right? There's all these different things that we want to be considerate about, both on the dark side and on the light side, to see if we're picking the right person, because you got to be a good picker. That's one of the things with this life. It's going to determine whether you're going to have a good life, and it's going to be, and no relationship is necessarily just easy. There's work required regardless if someone's healthy or unhealthy, because there's also stuff within you, right? There's things that you're made up in and your makeup that you're going to be working through. But you as the man, it's your job to lead, right? As the masculine role, your job is to lead. So you want to make sure you're picking the right one. So we need to be able to read women and pick the right one. So psychometrics is really important. Now, what's a good psychometric test? Well, there's tons of them. There's a ton of tests that you can take. This one is okay. Like, it's like, one of the things I would do is, when I first got into this, I was actually quite standoffish. Actually, I was, and by the way, now looking forward, I know why, due to my certain personality type and also upbringing and certain blind spots inside myself. But then I got talking to a very intelligent, highly successful man that's done over $1 billion worth of business. And he was the one that got me onto this. And he says he goes by this stuff and he starts going into deep psychology of this. And I'm like, wait, how can a test tell you about all this stuff? But it's a generalization. So take this as a generalization. It's not the main thing to do, but it's going to help specifically when picking your partner. So we want to know the Myers-Briggs. So there's different personalities, and I would encourage you to go do your research, but there's 16 personalities that Myers-Briggs basically identified. And you can take like this one, you can take the Hexaco score, you can take the dark triad, you can take the MPI test, the narcissist personality index. There's all these different things that you can do to basically identify, but this one's a good one. So when we look at these personality types, like look at all the avatars that we have, right? There's different avatars for our personality type. So when we're looking at our wife or our future wife, we want to see where the compatibility is. And one of the ways we can do that is just basically looking at their keys, right? So I'm going to put a disclaimer here. This is not a one test that can solve everyone's people reading skills, but this is to help you on your journey. So I want to send you on an information rabbit hole and you go do this. So ideally, there's a balance. So when we're looking at these letters, okay, so we look at the E. The E is the extrovert, are energized by people, introvert, often like working alone, right? So that's the E and the I. Then we move to how you perceive the world, right? So sensors are realistic people. They like the structured day by day stuff. They like the little day by day structure stuff. Intuits, and they prefer to focus on possibilities and big picture thinking. So you have small picture, which is like the details, and you have the big picture, right? Then we have thinkers or feelers. They tend to make decisions logically. Feelers tend to make decisions based off feelings. Then we have judgers, which tend to be organized and prepared. So they like to be organized before something. They got to be really prepared. Otherwise, they don't feel good. Whereas perceivers actually feel good being unprepared and like kind of going with the flow. So here's some things to consider when we're looking and screening for a partner. I'm going to give you the ideal, right? You ever heard that saying, opposites attract? Well, there's a reason why. It comes actually down to like psychometrics. Like there's actually science backed on this. So first of all, I would encourage you to go and do your own test, do your own Myers-Briggs test. And then when you come back, also as you're starting to get to know someone, be like, oh, just out of curiosity, what's your Myers-Briggs? So some things we want to look for, okay? So if you're new to this information, you haven't done this before, basically what will happen is you'll go through a series of questions. And remember, it's just general. But then it will spit out basically your letter makeup, okay? This is really good specifically for relationships. So the ideal is what we want to do. Ideally, we have all opposites. That's the main thing we have. We want to have all opposites. Our partner is actually, so we often think, maybe two extroverted people are going to be good together. By the way, it's a spectrum, right? Like it's not like you're introvert, I'm extrovert. Believe it or not, I'm actually an extrovert, but I actually appreciate some introversion. So it's a spectrum, right? So if you're too far extrovert and someone's too far introvert, they're not going to be able to meet. But if you have some opposites, that's actually going to be really good. So ideally, we have all opposites except for this one here, the sensing and intuitive. If this becomes opposite, it's going to be really difficult to get along because your worldview, how you view the world, is completely different. So you're always going to be having miscommunications. So now imagine this. You're meeting someone and right off the bat, you know that, we're not going to be most likely compatible from a personality standpoint. This is going to save so much miscommunication. Or if you're okay with having some of these opposites or some that are the same, well, then at least you can research how to have those conversations. So when you get your letters kind of brought back to you, what you want to do to have an ideal match is have the opposites except for the second one. You want these to be the same because it's going to offset you. One of the things that's very powerful is when your partner is different to who you are. Okay, so if this is the thing, here's the most important thing. The last two letters have to be opposite. These last two letters, I'm going to share the levels of importance. The last two letters have to be opposite. If you're going to have something, at least have these last two letters opposite. From there, The second is you want to have these two the same. If you can have these two the same. And then ideally you have these two opposite and these two opposite. So let's look at my wife and I. So my wife is an INFJ. She's an introverted, intuitive feeling judger, whereas I am an extroverted, intuitive feeling perceiver. So the way that this allows us to get along is because she, whenever we do meetings or things together, she always wants everything organized. Whereas I'm like, I'll just go with the flow. Like I could just flow the meeting. But now because she likes to get things organized, it organizes the meeting and we offset each other and get ourselves really organized. So it makes really helpful when we're doing decision making, specifically when we have meetings and these types of things. Let's look at introvert, extrovert. So both of us are on a spectrum. She can become introverted. It takes a lot of energy for her to be extroverted, but she can do it. Whereas for me, I naturally extroverted, but I like to be introverted. So I always found myself around friends that were introverted because that's how I recharge. I recharge with just one person, not a ton of people. I recharge with one person. So it's very helpful just to have one person around. So our spectrum meets. Then we perceive the world the same. We're both philosophical people. Whereas if we were opposite here, it'd be quite challenging because I'm quite a philosophical person, whereas my wife would perceive the world as like more structured and granular, right? Which is where she does her decision making here, but her worldview right here, if that was different, we're going to have quite opposites and meet each other. Now, let's look at this. Remember how I said you want to have opposites here? Well, for her and I, when I look over our life together and how we've made decisions, I say this is our exact weakness in our relationship, is that we're both feelers. So that's not really helpful when making decisions because you need logic, right? So I look at a lot of my time in my earlier journey and I think about like, oh, I was just going with the flow and I was just following my feelings and my feelings were guiding me. But if I was honest with myself and honest with my wife, that a lot of our feelings were immature. It was like illogical decision making. And someone that has a T thinks things through. And when you're making specifically lifelong decisions, even when picking your partner, I know you want to have compatibility. That is very important to have compatibility in terms of the feeling, but you also want to think it through. And that's a step a lot of guys miss is you want to think this stuff through. So when decision making, you want to think things through. So now that I have this data about our relationship and ourselves, I know that both her and I need to really leverage critical thinking when we're making decision making. We really need to leverage and really flush out all the emotion when we're making decisions because both of us are leveraged in the feeling. So we've actually made quite a few mistakes in the past because we're just way too feeling based, which is just not helpful in big life decisions. So you can see how right here, we basically got 3 out of the 4 markers where we're opposite here, we're the same here, we're the same here, which this should actually be opposite, and then opposite here, which now when you have that, you can kind of see where your strengths are and your weaknesses are together, and this will help you in the future make decisions. So some key takeaways. Start to learn how to read people, specifically women. And one of the ways you can do that is start learning and diving into psychometrics. Learn that, learn how to read people, learn the different aspects of how people are, learn to understand the questions to ask and all these types of things. It's quite deep, but I just wanted to send you down the rabbit hole. Then from there, use the Myers-Briggs as a guide, right? This is not finite. This is not true, but use it as a guide to show you different personality types. And then 3, be mindful to be over leveraged on looks over compatibility. I see this mistake all the time, just like Charlie Munger said, nothing more dangerous to a man than a woman with a pretty face and a crazy brain. And I've seen this time in and time out. Do not be one of those guys. Believe me, just do not be one of the guys. Do not be over leveraged on looks and under leveraged on their brain, who they are, their personality, where they come from, what's her relationship with her family, what's her relationship with her father. That's going to be a big one. What's her relationship as her mother? How's her mother as a mother? All these types of things are going to play into what's her relationship with finances. What's her decision-making process? Is she coachable? Is she got the traits to go in your direction? Does she see your vision? Can she nurture you? All these types of things. When you're low energy, what kind of vibe is she in? Is she always causing hissy fits? Like ton of things to consider, guys. What's her relationship with faith? That's going to completely play into what's her culture. Does you guys' cultures clash, or do the cultures mesh, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean, but just know that when you're picking the right person, right, you want to consider a lot more factors than just if it emotionally feels good. Because bear in mind, when you first get into a relationship, there's going to be a lot of oxytocin, a lot of chemicals. So the relationship doesn't actually start until 6 months. So let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this. If you got any questions, and looking forward to hearing from you.